Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. 12 months ago, almost to the day, I recorded my first ever YouTube podcast. And I recorded that with Mallory Dobbs and Misty Hurst. Mallory and Misty are two of my favorite people in motorcycling here in the US. And they have also carried a very, very strong sense of responsibility for representing women in the sport. If you watch the interview, you'll know that Misty was one of the first female AMA pro racers in the US, and since then has spent almost 2 decades as a coach for the California Superbike School. Mallory experienced her first taste of international competition this year. She represented the US in the inaugural FIM World Women's Supersport Champs. She got to experience international racing for the first time, GP class racetracks for the first time. She finished a respectable 11th in the competition, just missing out on the top 10 by a very small margin. And as a racer, she's come back even more determined and will be competing again this year in that same competition. Mallory also competed representing the US in the FIM Intercontinental World Series. She competed with men and women in this series and was voted the number 1 woman in the Supersport class for that international competition. So we're all proud of Mallory here in Pacific Northwest as a Pacific Northwest racer. And I thought it was about time we did a follow-up interview. So let's head on over and have a chat with Mallory. Mallory Dobbs. Well, you had the distinct, I had the distinct honor of seeing you again because you were the first ever podcast I ever did. That was a year ago.
Yep.
Didn't know what I was doing. Still don't really know what I'm doing. But obviously, you're a local racer here in the US for my region, but you're also now an international racer for the US. So things have changed a lot, right? How are you doing?
Really good. Yeah, it was a crazy year. It's crazy to think that was not even it was a year ago, but it feels like even maybe less than that. But it's been a crazy summer. I'd never really traveled outside of the country, and now I've been to all sorts of countries. So never would have thought that my racing would take me out of the US, but yeah.
Wow. So this year has been the first time you've ever traveled to Europe or internationally ever?
Really internationally ever. I had been to Mexico once or twice with my family for like a holiday, right? But we went to Cancun and we went to the resort, and so it was very much like you'd get there and they'd take you to the resort and you'd just be at the resort, it's all inclusive. Didn't really leave or anything like that. So it was very less intimidating. And so the first time I actually flew to Italy for our test, I was in Italy for a week on my own, and it was so crazy, just being in a place on my own, traveling to another country that I don't speak the language, right? I tried to learn Duolingo for 2 months and didn't know anything. And so I went to a cafe and the guy was like, "Oh, I don't speak any English." And I was like, "Okay." And then I just walked out. I didn't know what to do. Left. And so as the season went on, it definitely got easier. But it was that's my first time really traveling outside of the country on my own and to other places, that I don't speak the language.
Folks, for those of you who didn't watch the first podcast, and I'll put a link to it, this year for Mallory, as she was saying, she competed in the inaugural FIM Women's Circuit Racing Competition, the World Championship, representing the US. And she not only in the last few years did that, but she transitioned from US club racing to MotoAmerica class, Supersport, and also, and that was a huge deal. And so obviously a lot of growth and so also international. Now, when you went to Italy and Spain, I hope when you went to Italy, you didn't ask for a latte.
No, I learned. I'm such a sugary coffee drinker, but yeah, we'd go there and I did get lattes, but then I get my 1 pack of sugar, and there was times I'd drink espresso. I can't do without 1 sugar, but yeah, I learned how to order that in Italian and Spanish. So
excellent. First time I asked for a latte in Italy, they gave me a cup of warm milk because that's what it is.
Yes,
right.
It's about coffee, right? Yeah, latte is just literally warm milk.
Cafe latte. Yeah, that's right. Well, hey, look, so it's been a really big year. So I was reflecting on, obviously, you had new tracks in Italy and Spain, different competition. What When you first arrived and had to adapt to new tracks, like how did you prepare for the circuits you'd never raced before?
Yeah, so I mean, like when I did MotoAmerica full season in 2023, I bought Forza 7 for Xbox because Forza 7 had the most number of MotoAmerica tracks on it. And what I would do is I would play, and it was like a car game, right? But at least it was a way to like learn which way the track went. So I did that a lot when I went to MotoAmerica, and then when I went and did this whole thing in Europe, it was a little bit harder to kind of do that. I didn't really have a ton of time to prep and things like that, and like the Cremona is a brand new racetrack even to World Superbike. And so there isn't really a lot of games or anything like that. It's a brand new racetrack. So, and luckily we tested there before the season started because no one had been there. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of just like looking at track maps, watching onboard footage. It's like a lot of just watching some YouTube videos and kind of the hard thing is like the championship is on R7s, right? So it's helpful to be able to watch a small bike go around the racetrack, but not a lot of people put together R7 videos. I don't think that that's something people want to watch, because it's like, oh, we want to watch a super bike. We want to watch them go really fast. It's crazy. We want to watch kind of go around and rip. And, that's not quite the same about an R7. And so it was really hard to find like references for that. And so I tried to get to some of the tracks to do some track days. And a lot of it is you find it's really hard to find where the track day companies are. Like if you just search like, Jerez track day, like not all the companies come up or not all the dates. And so you really have to kind of know people over here to kind of be like, oh, hey, there's a track day that's getting put on by this company and this is what can happen. And then these people can bring you a bike. And so it was definitely difficult. Misano was the first round and, we get 25 minutes of practice and 25 minutes of qualifying. That's it. And so a lot of these girls that hadn't been to these racetracks, like you had to learn it so quickly. And like, it was just a lot, right? Like at Misano, like there were so many crashes and so many people just pushing to the limit because none of us want to be like, bad at it, right? None of us want to, and my whole thing was like, when we went to Misano, we actually had like a talking to at one point where they were like, you guys need to stop riding so crazy and stop crashing. And because that first race was just chaos, right? You could feel the anxiety on the grid. Like it felt like a novice race. Like when you like any racer could say this, like when they grid up to their first race and they have all the anxiety and the tension, you can feel it. And so that was what it felt like. But my opinion was that like you took the fastest girls from every country, right? Or every girl that had ever been like, I'm the fastest in this country, and I've done this races with all the guys, and I'm going to do it. Like you took, and the mentality of the egos and all these women is probably, I'm going to win this thing. And so, and I mean, I thought I was going to do better, right? And I think we all did. And so we get there, and that's kind of the mentality of what everybody was kind of doing. And so I think it was kind of eye-opening at that first race round to see that. And then after as the year went on, girls got to do more testing. We got to see kind of how things worked. And like the year was way better, at least like even for me personally. Like the year was just way better in the second half. And so after people got to like do some of the track days and everything and kind of figure out their teams, it was definitely a lot better. So I'm really excited to see next year kind of what it looks like because I think it'll be, obviously everybody kind of knows how it works now. And so it'll be a little bit easier, I think,
Congrats.
for everybody.
Yeah. Congrats for getting selected for next year. What's the criteria to get selected?
Like the news.
Yeah. It is public now, right? You announced it, I think. On Mallory Dobbs Racing on your website. Yeah. Yep. And so what's the criteria to get selected for the following year?
They just asked us to reapply. So even last year it was an application process where you just applied. They posted about it publicly last year they posted about it and said, hey, everybody apply. And this year it was like they sent emails out, and I don't know exactly who the emails went out to, but they basically sent out the emails and then everybody got the application and they picked, basically like 16, I think, or 15 girls from last year. And then they picked I think girls that did wild cards, throughout the season last year. And then they picked 3 girls that are like new to the championship that haven't done the championship at all. And I haven't done a ton of research or anything, but I think one of the girls like won the women's European championship last year. And so there's definitely some girls with like, basically it's a resume thing, right? They're like, hey, if you've done something or are doing something or have a good backing team, like, I think the big thing for them is that they want to make sure that it's a serious thing and it's taken seriously and everybody treats it that way and pays their bills on time. And so they really like to work with the big teams, which is really cool that there is like, Pata Prometeon, Crescent, Yamaha, like those teams are backing, other teams in there. Like, what was the other one? Yart supported a racer last year. And So you got some really big like World Superbike teams that are getting involved. GRT, Yamaha. So well-known teams are now supporting women in the championship, which I think brings a lot more validity to it as well. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's interesting you mentioned that there has to be some level of verified credibility for the rider. You don't want to end up like the Australian breakdancer at the Olympics, right?
I mean, I basically did. I got taken out last year. There's
Oh,
still
come
video of
on.
that. Remember?
Well, let's recap a little bit here. So the early rounds were tough for you. You had a few retirements, but like you were competing aggressively in the top 10 in a lot of those early rounds, right? I remember you and I were texting back and forth about it, and so like there's always if you'd known the track, if it wasn't your first year in Europe, for me, I'm an optimist, but are you racing for the same team this next year or okay?
No, I'm running my own team this year.
Wow. Okay. So what does that look? We're going to get into Europe more, but what does that look like? Rating? Because everyone I've spoken to, I interviewed Cormac Buchanan, who just made it into Moto 3 now. He's going to Moto 3 next year, and he came up through Red Bull Rookies Cup. And when you look at these folks, you think, oh, they must have all this support and it must be so easy. No, like Moto 3 even, he still has to scrape to get money. So how do you fund your own team? What are you doing? What do you need? All the listeners here.
I mean, it's cool because now that we've done the program and we've done the championship, it's a little bit easier to talk to someone about what it looks like and the exposure of what it looks like, right? As anything, when something first starts out, it's hard to really sell that to a sponsor when you're like, this is what's going to happen, I think. And so now that it's happened for a year, I think there's a lot of people that are really interested in what's happening. And so, me personally, I've raced now, nationally and seriously, I guess since 2022. So for the past 2 years, and really put together a really good program and really just kept my relationships with people really good. So, I raced in Super Hooligans back in 2023. I did a full season on a Ducati Hypermotard, and I was sponsored by Ducati Richmond, which is actually in Canada. And Doreen and I have a very good relationship. And so, she's going to be on board with Diva Racing this season. And a couple other things that haven't been posted yet. I'm still waiting on some ink to dry, but some really cool like Support Moto Racing, Fuel Injected 21. They're a person who actually sponsors Joe Roberts. So they're trying to get more involved in motorsports and trying to give back to the community. And so they're supporting me and Joe this year. And so, stuff like that where it's just, I'm building relationships with people and just trying to get more people in the World Superbike paddock. I think it is something that I can actually give to somewhat like other people, because it's like World Superbike for me at least was really daunting at first. Like saying I was going to go to Europe and race World Superbike seemed terrifying. But honestly, this championship is one of the easiest things to coordinate, as far as a running a team perspective, only because I don't have to worry about the transport of the bike. I don't have to worry about making sure I have all the spare parts. I don't have to worry because all that stuff is there for me. So like the spec class, they transport the bike for us. So it's like basically you have a bike with a number on it. It's yours for the season. Like you lease it from them, from JIR. And they take all the bikes and they take the trailer and they move them around to all the rounds. You show up, they set up all the things, they unload the bike, and then you get your little pit space and you're good to go. And so then at that point you just have like your crew there to do all the tires and the warmers and, they fuel the bikes. Like, it's so much easier than like MotoAmerica, right? Where like I was running my own team and I had my Supersport bike and my Super Hooligan bike, and I had to figure out how I was going to get that from here to New Jersey,
Yeah.
And so it's really like, as far as a team owner and like team running perspective, I mean, like based up from the MotoAmerica to the World Superbike thing, like for this championship in particular, it's as a team owner, it's a lot easier. And then it's just like I can focus a little bit more on the funding aspect and kind of bringing more people into World Superbike that wouldn't be there originally.
You're an engineer by training, right?
I am. Yes, I went to college for 4 years in a past lifetime before I got into motorsports. I went to college for civil engineering.
Okay, explains a lot. Okay, so you think like an engineer and you're sort of a system thinker.
Yes, yeah. When it comes to my racing program, it's like I almost like enjoy it when I can coordinate and do all that stuff, And people actually ask me if I ride like that too, which I don't. I'm not a very analytical rider. Like I'm not about the numbers or like how much everything is. Like I can look at the data, but I'm more of like a feel type rider.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it's like very different from how I operate as a professional.
Yeah, I see that in you. I mean, even at track days when you lap me, like it's weird because you're like at a track day, but it seems like you're really competitive too. You just anytime you're on a bike, you don't want to be passed. Like Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but
Not true.
okay, all right. Well, since we're talking about competition, like real competition, not old white guys like me, tell me about the competition in Europe. What was the most significant difference? I know it was global competition, but what was the most significant difference between MotoAmerica, where you're racing with competitive men and women, and international racing? And what was it?
It was a bit ruthless at times, to be honest. It's my first time racing with all women, and it's a very different mentality. Like, women racers are just a different way of thinking. But I think that, like, it was interesting to see, like, the championship did a really good job of picking the people that they brought into the championship. Like, I can't even imagine how hard of a feat it was to find 24 girls across the entire world that were similar in, experience. So there definitely was some gaps in, like, experience levels. Like, I think that, you have somebody that's been racing for a year and then somebody who's been racing for 10, or, like, there is definitely some discrepancies. And with the R7, like, I feel like it's a less intimidating bike. And so some of these girls, like, you just watch them ride and it's like they're riding above their skill level and you can see it. And so that's why there were some of the crashes we saw. Like, granted, it's racing, there's going to be crashing, but, like, it was kind of all over the place as far as, like, that front 8 or 9 girls were very consistent and, like, hardly ever put a wheel wrong. And then you have that, like, middle group pack that's, like, sometimes would be good and sometimes would be crazy. And I kind of rode like, at the end of the year, I got at the front of that group. But during the middle of the year, I got taken out 3 times last year.
I remember.
Yeah. And I had never been, like, I had been hit a bunch in MotoAmerica, like a couple times in MotoAmerica. And I blame that on guys seeing the braids and getting angry. But
I like that.
so, because sometimes they were just, like, making hairball moves, they just, but yeah, so I mean, there definitely was some discrepancies between the two, but, like, I got to spend, and we can get into this more, but I got to spend some significant time with, like, Anna Carrasco, and lived with her in Spain for a couple weeks and got to train with her, and, she's an amazing human being, and, like, getting to train with her and see her riding ability all the time is just so cool. Like, oh, okay, like, and she was so helpful, I could see the little things that I was doing wrong and could point them out. But my riding, personally, throughout the year of racing in Europe has, I think, gone exponentially up. Like, my skill level, the things we worked on this year, like, coming from the ZX6, and racing in Supersport, I didn't have to worry about how good my tuck was on the front straight. I didn't have to worry about how slow I released the clutch on, corner entry, or how much I was on the side of the tire versus accelerating on the center part of the tire. Like, things like that I never really thought of. But, like, we'd looked at the data, and, like, you're talking about, like, a couple tenths of a second of, like, I would tip in, like, there's a back straight at Estero, and, like, you would go through it, and it was a little bit of a kink, but you're full gas. I was tipping in later and not holding on the side of the tire as long. And I was losing, like, 6 kilometers an hour on a front straight full gas.
Wow.
Because the other girl that had the fastest lap time was tipping in sooner and then was staying on the side of the tire longer and was accelerating all the way out to the curbing. And it was just, like, stuff like that you don't think about. And so, like, I had to think about a lot of little things like that and work on my braking technique, like throttle the gas, like how quick, stuff like that. It, like, means, like, tenths of a second. But when you're riding a spec series where everybody has the exact same bike, it means everything. And so, me as a racer, like, I had to work on so many personal things that, like, maybe some other people already knew and already have been doing, but that habits that I had to fix from racing a Supersport bike for so long.
Oh, so much there. Wow. I want to go straight into, like, track riding skills, which you're not going to do. Let's go back to Anna. So, I mean, now, didn't she race in Moto3 as well?
Yes. And then she had a really bad crash. She high-set and broke her back.
Okay. So how did that relationship start? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but people tell me that racers are killers. They just want to kill each other. So how do you become friends with a competitor? How did that happen?
I won't take it away from her. She's definitely still a killer. I didn't have a bike at a track day that we went to, and I was riding an R6 from Sheridan Moraes, who's a very well-known racer as well. Yep. And he was helping me out, and she actually had a spare R7 at the event, and so she let me ride it in one of the sessions, or the next, like, we were racing at the Portuguese national event, and it was she just ended up offering that to me, and she said, hey, like, let me know if you need help with anything, and I texted her and I actually took her up on the offer. I said, hey, listen, I'm trying to ride these 2 racetracks again on the R7. Is there any way you could help me out? And, she made sure and she got it all hooked up for me. And I just showed up to the track day and, we got to venture around in her van, drive like 10 hours from Estoril to Jerez in a day. And then we rode Estoril and then we got in the van and we loaded the van all up with all the shit and then drove down to Jerez, which is, it was like, I think it's like 7 hours.
Yeah.
Rode to Jerez and then rode the next day at Jerez. And then we drove from there to Barcelona, which was, I think, 10 hours. And so rode around in the van, traveled across the countryside, rode motorcycles.
Did you do any street riding over there?
No.
You don't ride on the street anymore, right?
I still do from time to time. I have a street bike R1 that I use for coaching, but I'm not home enough to really do it anyway. And I don't mind riding at home, but when I see all the bike culture in Spain and Europe, like, it terrifies me. Like,
it's so good.
Like,
I rode
zip around.
I rode from the south of Italy all the way to Spain on a Ducati Multistrada a few years ago, did the Dolomites and stuff. And there's something about the riders there, they just all know how to ride. But staying on the topic of Anna and the competition and sort of as you think about your growth as a racer, I'm curious about nutrition. What have you learned about nutrition and physical fitness that was surprising? I mean, I know you've been competitive your whole life. I know you've competed in horse racing or equestrian. I mean, you've done a lot. You're competitive, but have you learned things about nutrition as well, or that were different from MotoAmerica?
Not really. So I have the same physical trainer as I did when I was in MotoAmerica. I did get to go to her gym and train. So actually going to like the competition portion of that comment was like, Anna's super helpful and everything, but she did joke that the moment I got faster than her, she was done helping me. But I'm not really that, like, I wasn't really like near her enough for her to be worried about it. But yeah, so I went to her gym, Global Performance, and they actually train, there in Barcelona, and they train a ton of professional athletes, like soccer, well, I guess football, and a lot of other like professional athletes that are in Spain. And they killed me. Like, it was just like, their workouts and stuff, it was really cool because like they actually tailored a lot of the workouts for motorsports. So, we'd do a workout where like we'd have like a handlebars on like a rope, and then we would be like, you'd lean on it like on the ground and you'd be like engaging your core, and then you'd have to like, go through like a racetrack, like you would show us an onboard lap at like Estoril, and we'd go through the whole thing, and different stuff like that like actually they trained a lot, like specifically for motorsports, which was really cool. And really kind of showed me that I was like, I hadn't had a chance to really train because as traveling, it's so hard to find somewhere to train. Like, I mean, I was running, like I'd run wherever in Italy or something. But you can't find a gym that'll let you do any sort of like, day pass or anything. Like I emailed this gym in Italy and they were like, no, we only do yearly passes. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't work for me. And so it was definitely hard on the road, like while I was traveling and staying alone and wherever I was, to like find somewhere to be consistent with the program. And that was, I think, one of the things that like kind of hurt me this season too, is it's just so hard to like find the consistency and eat healthy. And I mean, granted, in Europe, it's a lot easier to eat healthy. Their food's just so much better.
Yeah.
Everything's so much cleaner. You just feel better. So it's definitely cool. But yeah, it was really hard for me to find consistency with the training while I was there.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, you're clearly fit because you took some big hits and like you haven't broken anything this year, right?
Yeah, it was a good year of lots of crashing, and I didn't get any serious injuries. So. Which I'm very thankful for because there was a lot of people that did have some serious injuries along the way.
What do you think some people break more than others? I mean, I know you're not a doctor, but there's clearly a way to fall, right? And I know it all happens really fast, but like there's a way to tumble, there's a way to fall. Like, do you think it's just luck on your side, or is there something like...
I think a little of it's luck. I think a little bit is some luck, and then some of it is like most of the crashes I had were pretty minor. It was like, I was on the brakes a little too hard. I tucked the front and you're just like going in the slowest corner of the racetrack, I had a pretty big one in Jerez. The curbing there is like stair stepped. And then as you go out on the edge of the curbing, it drops off like 6 inches. And there's a section where like you're basically going out onto the curbing and then you're coming back. Right. And as I was doing that, my rear tire came off the edge of the curbing and went down that 6 inch drop. And just like, and it was like top of fourth gear. Like I tumbled, and that one I like got up and I was like, I don't know, like, am I okay? Like I had to assess, and I ground my finger down a little bit, but otherwise I was fine. And yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, like, think there, some of it is like the racetracks have a lot of, runoff and gravel and things to slow you down.
Yeah.
And, like I said, I think most of my crashes were just minor in nature.
What?
So I got really lucky. But when I got taken out for the first time in Misano, I took a foot peg to the inside of the thigh, and I got really lucky on that one because it like scratched it like ripped through my suit and scratched my thigh, but it left like this big of a bruise, and it was instantly like red and purple.
Wow.
And I'm really lucky it didn't like actually stab me.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a lucky trip.
You're sponsored by Bison, right, for your suits?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what happens when you puncture a suit? Do they send you a new suit or they repair it?
It depends. Over here, they haven't quite gotten the structure to be able to help support. Because like when we're at MotoAmerica, they have Sage tailoring and they fix all your suits. And I was actually really surprised. So like, they actually don't have someone there to fix suits unless like Alpenstars has a guy there. But nobody has like there's no person there to just fix everybody's suits. So like, there isn't really a way to fix it when you're there. And so, it's definitely like you have to have 2 or 3 suits because you have to be prepared for ripping all of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But they definitely like, so when Rob with Bison was there, one of the rounds, he actually found, what is there? It's like Venom. I can't remember the name. There's another suit company that they've partnered with that does like vegan suits and stuff like that. And they actually helped repair my suit one of the times. So Rob made friends with them and was like, "Hey, can you fix this?"
Oh, so your suit's vegan leather?
No, but so they are there at the World Superbike rounds. And
Okay.
Bison is trying to pair with them to maybe do some new ones.
Got it.
I can't remember the name of them.
Yeah, suits are amazing. I just noticed that, Simon Crayfire has this charity called Riders for Dogs.
Uh-huh.
And he really loves dogs. And he auctions off like very famous riders' gear. So he's just doing an auction on Acosta's suit from Phillip Island. He was. Yeah. Anyway, so like, and I actually just made a bid on Acosta's suit, and actually up here to my right, I have Alicia Spargaro's knee pad from one of his races. I like that sort of stuff. So staying on you. So we talked about your growth as a racer on a track. Tell me about mental toughness. Like, do you describe yourself? Do you have a regime for mental, like preparing your head?
Yeah, yes and no. There's definitely been, I've had a lot of conversations with my coach about this because my performance coach, Ethan, at Southern Pride Performance, we have a lot of he talks to a lot of racers. So he works with like Maddie Skoltz and Campy and a lot of the guys over here at MotoAmerica. And so, he kind of takes what they do or what they can learn and then kind of applies it to all his other racers. And so we've talked a lot about ways to do that, like taking my career highlights and having a highlight reel. So in moments where, so I had a really bad crash and I'm starting to doubt myself and I'm like, oh my God, can I do this? Like this sucks, blah, blah. I can sit and before I go out, go over my highlight reel and be like, remember that one time I got 7th at, whatever, Laguna on the hyper motard. Remember when I finished 13th at, okay, remember that time that this thing happened or when I signed this deal or whatever positive moment I had in my life or racing career that could make it so remember I'm supposed to be here. Because I do have those moments a lot where I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I spending all this money? I'm putting myself at risk, putting myself through so much stress for something that, may not always be fun. And, sometimes I don't feel like I'm very good at. And so I have to sit there and remind myself of why I'm doing it. So that's definitely something I've had to work on over the past year, this year, even last year too. But these last few years have been the hardest of my race career and they just keep getting harder and harder. But at the same time, I'm doing harder stuff, right? It's harder for everybody. It's not just me. And so, it is a difficult thing and it is something that I get to say that I've done. And so it's really exciting. I have to remind myself of that, I'm doing something that a lot of people wish they could be doing. It's something in the works. It's always changing. We always talk about what I could do to improve my mental fortitude.
I'm glad you said that. There's a couple of things in there you just said, and sometimes when you're talking to people, you don't realize it, right? Sometimes what you're saying, but there's a couple of things in there. I remember trading notes of you on WhatsApp, I think in the second race, and I was like, girl, you're racing with the best in the world. A few years ago, you were club racing. So you're in the 1% of people, not even that. You also mentioned why am I doing this? Why are you doing this? Like, do you have a clear answer to that, or is it? I mean, it's just you love it, and that's all you need. Like, I don't know.
I think it's something that, like, it's always I mean, as racers, we always try to find that answer, right? Because, yeah, it is something that we're crazy. We keep doing it over and over again. I think for me, it's like, one is I always enjoy being that role model for other women to do this. You know, I get messages from people from time to time that say, like, you're the reason I got a motorcycle, or you're the reason I stayed in this, or you're the reason I want to look into racing, you know, because I thought I could do it, but I was scared. I really enjoy being that positive role model to show people that they can do it. So that's kind of like an extrinsic thing, but like intrinsically, I just want to see how far I can go. Like I want to see how good I can do. Like you know, we are always improving that little itty bitty bit, you know, and it's like, I'm so competitive and I want to win. And, you know, if it's possible for me, I don't know, but it's like, that's kind of my goal is like, I want to win and show myself that I can do it. And so it's always, that's kind of like intrinsically is like, I just.
Were you that way in your, you know, your other career as well, or other sports? I know you did competitive. Was it equestrian?
Yeah, so I showed horses in performance. So basically, which is, it's so funny because it's like the slowest horse event possible because like basically it's just riding around in circles and looking pretty. So I trained my own horse when I was in my teens. I got my last horse when he was 4. He's now 18. So it's 14 years ago. I got a horse that I trained and took to the World Championship show in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And at the age of 18 or 19, I became a World Championship horse shower.
What? Wait,
Yeah,
I didn't know this. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so it says World Championship, but it's mostly just in the country. Yeah, so the Pinot World Championship show is once a year. It's 2 weeks, and you know you pay a lot of money for a belt buckle you could have bought.
Sure.
You know, for way cheaper, right? It's just like racing. You know, you could have bought the trophy for cheaper than what you spend, but it's about what you have for it. You know, so. It was really cool to be able to train my own horse and do that. And so there's a lot of time I've spent every day at the barn, you know, riding at least an hour, training, getting him ready. Cause at that point, it's not even physically fit for me. It's also getting my horse physically fit to be able to do what I want him to do. And, it was a lot of fun. And that's, I mean, I attribute to who I am today as a person because of horse showing. It taught me a lot about being independent and strong and being consistent and, you know, being responsible and all those things that, you know, I got my first horse when I was 11 and which was pretty late for girls that showed horses even too, you know, because some girls started when they were like 6, just like motorsports.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but there's a parallel there. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I had to train really hard and it was, you know, something I sacrificed a lot in high school and like even where I chose to go to college was because it was local to my hometown where I could still get him ready for the world show. Cause I went to the world show my freshman year of college. And so, you know, I basically planned it where I was like, okay, I can stay here in town. I can go to this really good engineering school and I can still go to the world show. Like that was always my goal. And so, yeah, that was something I did. And then, you know, I showed horses up until I was 24, 25, up until I really started getting more into motorsports. But yeah.
It's interesting that you touch, well, you touch on a few things and you raised your role as what you've become more of a role model for women. You raised that. So I'm kind of going to go there a little bit, if you don't mind. You know, you've chosen 2 careers one as a professional road racer and one as an engineer that are traditionally dominated by men, right? I work in engineering myself, software engineering. And so that's interesting. And, you know, some women I talk to just don't want to talk about it. They're like, hey, I'm a racer. It doesn't matter. Others understand that maybe they don't want to talk about it, but they feel like they have a responsibility because they are doing it. And in the interview I did with Matt Oxley recently, he talked about the first woman ever to compete at the TT level in the Isle of Man. And she, at the time, what the men did, the old white men at the time did, they said, well, you're too light. You need to be this weight. So she spent like 3 weeks eating chocolate to put on weight for the TT, and she raced him a TT.
Yeah.
Right. And so from the early beginnings, but as you think about, like, you know, I'm a huge supporter of women, right? Like I was raised by a single mom. Like I never really had a male influence in my life. So I was raised with a level of respect for women just in general, you know, and for me, motorcycling, I know that there's a physical element to it. It's very physical. But other than that, you know, you're sitting on a gyroscope that reacts the same way no matter who's on it, doesn't want to fall over, a gyroscope wants it, like all of these things. So in your mind, what is it a supply and demand thing around the reason why we haven't seen women at the very, very top yet? Just there aren't enough women, or is it something else? Like I know it's kind of a hard question, but how do you think about, because I'm just a track day guy, right? So, but I see you. I mean, I see women pass me all the time and kick my ass all the time at track days. But help me understand, like, what do you think's going on? Like, are we at a turning point, or not?
I think the fact of the matter is, like, you look at the number of people who are in MotoGP, like the number of racers that are there at MotoGP, and the number of racers who probably could also compete at MotoGP that just don't have, like, they don't have the grid spots or the capability to get there. There's so many more people that I think are MotoGP capable. But the fact of the matter is, it's limited, right? The number of people is so small. Like, you're taking such a small percentage even of guys to MotoGP, let alone like such a small percentage of women racers, right? And I think with the technology and everything like that, I think could some girl go and compete in MotoGP? Totally. But is that going to happen when there's this many other guys waiting for their ride for MotoGP? Probably not. I think it's just a matter of, like, you look at the percentage of people doing that level of racing, and it's so small that, like, the chances of getting a female like that up there is just so difficult. Yeah, it's physically demanding, but, like, also you look at some of these racers that are so tiny, like, you know, like, some guys are really tiny, and it's something that we can't train. You know, it's something, like, even for me physically, like, I had to train a lot on upper body when I was racing my ZX6 because, you know, I have really strong legs because I showed horses for so long, but, like, I have a better lower body capability of moving my body around, but I just don't have the physical, like, upper body strength. And so I had to train a lot on that. I'll be interested to see how Anna does this year on a Supersport, because she's moving on up to 600s this year. So she's doing World Supersport on a Honda CBR. And obviously there's a lot of factors, right? There's the team, the bike, the whatever, but I actually talked to her a little bit about it, and she says, you know, the size of the CBR is actually pretty similar to the R7. It feels like that way to her anyway. And so she's, you know, really excited about it. And so I think that there is opportunities for women to do it, but there's just not a lot of women that are at that capability either, or that push that hard, right?
Right.
You touched on the fact that it's like, okay, I'm in a male dominated sport in both my job and my sport. But that means that I've had to have this mental fortitude even for that. People ask me all the time, like, what is your advice to women? And I'm like, my biggest advice is just to, like, one, find somebody you can trust to get advice from. Don't take advice from the general population, because we get unsolicited advice all the time. But two is that you have to have really strong skin, and you have to, like, really thick skin, and you have to know what you want and not let other people falter that. Because I've had plenty of people that have told me, I only get what I want. I only get this because I'm a girl. Must be nice because you're a girl. Wow, you know, you're not going to ever make it. You don't take this seriously enough. Like, people have actually told me that. And some people that I actually dearly loved told me that. And, you know, I had to take it and say, that's your opinion. And I'm going to keep doing what I want to do because that's my life and that's what I want. Yeah. And so, and I'm sure it's happening to every girl or even some guys, right? It happens to everybody. It's not even just a gender specific thing. It's just worse with the gender, right? I am a female. I, like, am that way. That is who I am. I'm a female racer. There's no doubt about that. Like, that's a fact. I can't say, like, oh, I'm not. Like, I can't ignore that, right? I can take that, embrace it, and use it for, you know, one of my selling points is sponsorship. Like, sure, I can take that and have that be. I'm a minority, right? That's cool. But at the end of the day, it's like I'm still a racer that wants to do well.
Yeah.
So I got a little off tangent there, but, like,
no,
like,
but
I think that
no, but talking about doing well. First of all, I'm really thank you, because I know that not everyone wants to talk about those topics. But talking about doing well, let's talk about that, because you really turned around the last half of the season in Europe. I was up, just so you know, I don't watch on demand. Like, I was up watching every race.
Thank you.
Because I have a 5-year-old, and he wakes up really early, so it's real easy. But I keep going, like, if only. There were so many if onlys where you were, like, competing at some rounds you were, like, in the top 5 in the race and dropped back to under 10 or whatever. But that a lot of the times your fault is, if you took away the areas where you were either wiped out by someone else or not, you would have, like, I think you just missed out on top 10, right? You had a really big turnaround in the second half. You came 11th, I think.
Yeah. So we finished 11th in the season, and in the last 5 rounds, I think we were top 8. So like we were one of the top 8 like sport in the last half of the season, the last 3 rounds, I guess. Out of the last 6 races, I was in the top 10, 5 out of the 6 of them. So yeah, the
Great.
second half of the season was much better than the first half. And I think that's just attributed to, some of the tracks I got to actually do track days at. So I got to ride the R7 at those racetracks.
Mm, mm.
A couple of them I stayed over in Europe in between the rounds, so I didn't go home and come back. So there wasn't the jet lag issue. And I think, a lot of it was just the track time, getting to ride the racetracks. So,
I thought a lot about you at the beginning of the track season because the first 4 days I did it was raining at the Ridge, our local track, and
yeah,
I used rain tires for the first time, and
yeah,
to the point now where this sounds like such a first world problem, but I have 2 RS660s. One is a
same.
Trofeo, which is the track only version. Another one's one I built, but I'm turning that into a rain bike. And the reason is
Mhm.
because I live in Seattle, but like you did really well in the rain over there, right? Was that because of your experience riding in the US here in the rain, you think?
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, some of those girls haven't really ridden much in the rain at all because they don't race in the rain or they don't get rain. So yeah, I think I have a lot more comfort, and I think honestly, I just have a lot more experience with like the mixed conditions too, right? We had
Yeah.
we had our practice at Cremona that was like mixed conditions, and then we had Donington in mixed conditions, and it was like I was like, oh, like I've done this, like I know exactly what we're kind of like dealing with, and so it's definitely I got a little more confidence or more up to speed a little quicker in those conditions just because I have so much experience in it.
Didn't you top one of the FP rounds, one of the practice rounds? Did you come fastest in one of them?
Yeah, so I was in
Yeah.
Cremona and I was in
Yeah.
P1 up until the last lap, and Maria threw in a fast lap at the very end, so I finished second. And it was just practice, so it's like,
Yeah.
it didn't mean anything. But at the same
But
time, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
there weren't any races in the rain, were there?
No, everything like
No.
at Estoril, it was so weird because like the weather was so crazy. Like we showed up to the track and everything's flooding, everything's pouring down rain, and then by the time that our like qualifying time came up, it was like it's like dry enough for slicks, and so we went out in slicks, and there was just like wet spots that you had to like avoid. But yeah, there was never a rain race, so it wasn't until the Intercontinental Games that I got to actually like ride in the wet, actually race in the
Well,
wet.
I'm going to make a bet. I want you to do really well next year, regardless of conditions. If there's a race in the rain, I'm going to bet you're going to be in the top 3.
All right, I would
Right?
love
I'll
that.
tell you what, I'll bet you like $200 in
Nice.
sponsorship for your team. And if you win, okay, I'm going to make a commitment now. Okay, if you
You're right
win,
here, guys.
I'm going to give you $1,000.
All right, all right.
Okay, from my
Got
company,
it
not
written
my
down.
YouTube channel, my company. My company's a company that probably doesn't really align with motorsports, but maybe you could talk me into sponsoring you. Hey, so let's talk about tires. So I'm learning a lot about tires. Obviously, it seems obvious, but you're running Dunlops in MotoAmerica, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're running Pirellis in Europe. So how much of a change was that?
Yeah, so it's hard because like it was a whole big change in general, right? Like when I
Yeah.
came over to Europe, it was a new bike and new tracks, new tires. I had raced on Pirellis when I was a club racer back in the day, and then I switched to Dunlops for MotoAmerica. And so the Pirellis are definitely like I really enjoy the consistency that they offer. Like they just operate differently, and I really enjoy like it fits with my riding style a little bit better. It was actually really interesting because when we did the Intercontinental Games, which we can probably talk about, but like
Yeah. Let's do
they did Japanese Dunlops for that event, and so we went from I rode the same bike, the championship bike, because those bikes that we rode for the Intercontinental Games were the same ones from the women's championship. So I rode the exact same bike on Japanese Dunlops, and it was interesting because it operated a lot differently. It felt weird. The front had a different tire profile. And in general, like the weather was about the same, and the fastest guy in the Intercontinental Games was still 2 seconds slower than what Anna did in qualifying. So the tires were just like way different than the Pirellis, but I don't know, I really liked them. I had no complaints, and like we were swapping them. Like we didn't get to do like a tire plan or anything like that because everything was very regimented. So it was like you get a new set of tires for practice, and then you get a new set of tires for qualifying, and then you scrub those tires in. Like then you have a new set for the race, and so everybody had to swap tires at the same time. So no one had like any sort of advantage on the tires.
I have a stack of Pirellis in my garage that I'm going to try next year because I've been running Dunlops. But Sage, our local Pirelli guy, taught me into them. So, yeah, so it is probably good to transition to the the Intercontinental Championship too, because was this the first as well? Like, is that I'd never heard of it before. Okay.
Yeah, first year. Yeah, so my whole year was full of inaugural events.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. What
but
was this event about? Was it like the Olympics
yeah,
or something kind of thing?
basically. So it's like MX of Nations. So
Okay.
for anybody that watches any sort of dirt bike stuff, it was, so basically they took all the continents, and they said they had, let's see, what did we have, like 6 teams, I think. So we had Asia, Europe, Africa, Oceania, North America, and
Latin America, South America.
South America, I think. So we had six different continents, and each continent had 8 riders. So 4 riders were on an R3, and 4 riders were on an R7.
Oh.
And they basically, it was a cumulative points thing. So basically, the continent with the most number of points wins the trophy, which was combined R3 and R7. So basically, your entire team counts towards your points, and then the continent with the most number of points gets the trophy. And so it was at Jerez. It was a 3-day event still. So it was like we had practice. We had just an open practice on Friday. We got a lot more track time than like any of the women's championship events. And so Friday we got practice, and then Saturday we did practice and qualifying, and then Sunday we just did 2 races. And yeah, it was interesting. I mean, unfortunately our team got taken out a couple times. So we had basically a bunch of MotoAmerica people. So Avery Dreyer, Matthew Chapin, the Junior Cup kids that won championships. We have to have 1 female on each team. So each of the 1 R3 and 1 R7.
Yeah.
So we had Michaela Moore as our
saw her.
The R3. Yeah, so she came over. And then Max Toth got to ride the R3, which is funny because he's so tall, but he was doing so good. And then we had Hayden Schultz on the R7, Blake Davis, Andrew Lee, and then me. So Andrew was a fill-in because Rocco got hurt last minute. So literally 2 days before we were leaving, MotoAmerica sent out an email about it. And so we jumped on it. JP and Andrew and I are all calling them, talking to Michael and Bill and MotoAmerica, going, we need Andrew. And so Andrew ended up coming last minute, which is really cool because I never thought I'd be on the same team as my boyfriend in my whole entire life.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to go there because I know it's, but it's funny you mentioned Rocco because I actually got to hang out with him at a Christmas party in LA at Keith Code's house. So, so Rocco was there, and also this Kenzai, who's a young Japanese-American kid that the California Superbike School both trained both of them. They also trained Joe Roberts, by the way. Keith Code.
He's racing over in Europe too, right?
Yeah, Keith trained Joe over in Europe and stuff. The school, they don't get enough credit for the great riders they produce. It's funny. I'm a big fan of the school. But now you also got so that's cool. You got to compete with your boyfriend. So everyone, Mallory has a boyfriend. Sorry, you're breaking a whole lot of hearts now. I'm probably going to lose a bunch of viewers now. Hey, but you also got voted the #1 female in the Supersport class at the Intercontinental Games, right?
So I got the most number of points for any of the females. Yeah. So it was actually crazy. So we raced the first race, and it got red flagged due to a crash that put a bunch of gravel on the track. So I finished second female behind Roberta Ponziani, who's Italian. She raced in the championship. She was in the top 5 every single race, right?
Yeah.
So I finished right behind her, and I was like, it was so fun because it was like Roberta and Hayden and Andrew and I, and we were all like, Hayden kept passing Roberta, on the brakes, and then she'd pass him on the gas, and then Andrew and I are sitting back, and Andrew would make a pass, and then I'm just sitting back, like, watching it all. It was so cool.
That is great. You're not allowed to use cameras, right, on those competitions? No. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't get to have any cool onboard footage or anything. But it was a really fun race, and I was bummed it was red flag because I really wanted to make a last lap pass on Andrew, just to show him a wheel, just cause, But yeah, so the first race happened then, and then the second race we started it, and then literally 2 laps in, it starts dumping down rain. So we're we get down the back straight, you see a couple of raindrops, you're like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then you get to the next corner, and it's everybody's like, yep. So everybody almost crashes, and then they red flag it. 2 people crash, and so there was a whole thing. And then we ended up swapping to rains because it was still kind of raining. It ended up stopped raining. So then it was this weird condition where half the track was dry and half of it was wet. And so we worked our way up, and we ended up. I had a little bit of a mistake. I almost crashed once or twice. I had almost I was the rear kind of split out. Kind of lost 2 spots to 2 of the girls, Roberta, and then the girl from Asia. And then I like kind of made my way back and finished the race in first female. So then I got the most number of points over the weekend for female racers. So won the Supersport award, which was really cool because it's like, most of the female racers on the R7s were girls from the women's championship. And so it was just really kind of validating and such a positive note to end the season on after everything that had happened to end it with that with like a gold helmet. It was cool.
Yeah, well, that is great. And thinking about now you're transitioning to your own team as MKD, right? Racing team. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be interesting. Like, okay, being an owner and a racer with your name on the bike. Obviously, I'm a super one-eyed, proud Kiwi because Bruce McLaren did that. McLaren Motorsports, Formula One, New Zealand founded team, just in case you're wondering. And he raced for his own team and Formula One. And you don't see that happen very often. And on the topic of Kiwis, because, I'm a Kiwi guy. That's the name of the Moto podcast, right? There's a couple of Kiwi women that are competing now. They're wild cards. Yeah. And one of them is going to be racing. So one of the things you don't know about me, the reason I wear black all the time, is that I love techno and house music. Okay. Not that EDM shit. I'm talking real underground house music, right? Yeah. You're too young to know what that is, but real house music. And one of the pioneers of that is Carl Cox.
Oh, really?
And Carl Cox is like probably the biggest DJ on the planet. And he has a race team, Carl Cox Racing. And he's going to have a team in next year. And his race is a Kiwi girl who I don't know. And so I need to meet this person and speak to her. Maybe you know her. But
Yeah, Avalon. Yeah.
Avalon. Yeah, I don't know Avalon.
Yep. Yeah, so she did a wild card round at Cremona.
Okay.
So she did a race at Cremona and she did really good. And she was a racer back in the day, but like she raced like a different, I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like some 400 women's championship or some other women's championship a while back in World Superbike. And then, so then she hasn't really raced since. And then she recently had a kid and then she heard about this women's championship thing and she's like, I'm in, I want to do it. And so, it sounds like she's doing the full season this year. So it'll be good. She's going to be great competition. Yeah. She's ruthless. There was a couple of times I passed her on the back straight at Cremona, and I was like, all right, like I'm past her enough, and she was like, up around the outside. I was like, Jesus, okay, never mind. Like she's a good racer. It'll be fun.
Yeah, well, New Zealand's only 5 million people, not many racetracks. It's a very hard place to do well in. In Cormac Buchanan, we were talking about, he's the first Kiwi since Simon Crafar to make it to MotoGP class, to the GP class. So he'll be in Moto3 next year. And so I'm conscious of time because you're so busy, and I know you're on out of state right now. But we talked about like your year transitioning to international racing. We talked about you setting up your own team. You talked a lot about women in racing, which was great, and I've got a lot of ideas around that because I know that Royal Enfield have been sponsoring a women's cup in the US, and which I think is great that they're doing that. It's almost like a Red Bull Rookies Cup for women in the US. Are you going to race in MotoAmerica next year?
The plan is to do the Ridge round. It's a Twins Cup round this year, so we might try to put together the R7 for that because I do have a street bike, or I had a street bike R7 that we've kind of made a race bike now, but it's stock.
Yeah.
And then also probably race the Hyper Motard and Super Hooligan.
Really?
Okay. Because we still have that. So that's the plan, is to race there for sure. It's just a matter of which class and what we're doing, but that's the plan. There's a really big schedule in the women's championship this year. So we do the first 2 rounds and there's 9 weeks off in like June and May. And so, May and June or June, July. So it fits right in the schedule for the bridge round in June. So.
Okay. And my last question, on that topic of, because you're trying to balance both, is I see you at the track days because I'm lucky enough to be at the same track as you. Do you still enjoy track days, or do you find them to be a bit amateurish?
I mostly go to track days to do coaching now, right?
Okay.
So when I'm out at track days, I'm normally coaching somebody. Because I do one-on-one coaching. I work for 2 fast track days still. I try to keep up on that stuff as much as I can, and I have some really great friends that still always want my help, and I love giving back to the sport and teaching people what I know. And then sometimes I go to track days for some testing, but normally when we go to track days for testing, we have a purpose. We're going there with a goal in mind of, hey, we want to test this thing, and this is what we're going to do for it. So last year we did a little bit of testing on the R7 once we got it, and so Don came out with me, and Yeah,
Nice
we
one
just kind of
for you.
worked on some testing. So Don and I had the R7, and that was when we first started doing a little bit of testing. We didn't get our bike until May, so it's a little bit late, but we tried to get some riding time on the R7 just so we could get used to the way it acted and how it worked and that kind of stuff. So really, when I go to track days now, like back in the day, I used to go just to like go around and try to go faster. And now it's like, oh, I need to go around and like test this thing out and see
Data.
what happens when we change this. And so it's a little bit more about testing stuff now. There's a lot more of a purpose in my riding. So sometimes it's nice just to go out and have no agenda, but it doesn't happen really much anymore, right? Because there's so many things that have to happen. And, I'm still working a full-time job while I'm doing all this. So
Yeah, I get tired just thinking about it. So I've booked. I have 22 days booked next season on the track.
Wow.
Between here, Seven Northwest and California. And I haven't actually booked any with Mark. Maybe I should hit you up for some coaching. You're probably already booked. I want to spend more time riding in the rain. Like I want to learn to get better in the rain. I know it sounds weird, but like all the fine inputs and all the things, just everything has to be more smooth, right?
Totally. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it ultimately makes you a better rider in the dry too, because everything should just be just as smooth in the dry as it is in the wet. But you typically don't ride as smooth in the dry because you don't have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will. So there's a new coaching portal for Too Fast going up soon. And basically what's going to happen, so basically what's going to happen is there's going to have all the coaches and everything on there, and you can just click a coach, and then that coach will have all the dates that they're available, and you can just click a date and book it. So it'll be all live, and it will have everything of like active of like what dates I could actually be coaching. There's a lot of things up in the air right now with my summer, just because I'm considering moving to Europe for the summer and trying to train and stay over there. So I'm still trying to figure that out because I got to get a visa thing figured and then, some other stuff. So I'm working on it. We'll see. Also waiting on, whether or not, my boyfriend has a ride for next year or gets to race. And so there's a lot of moving parts. Our life is a bit chaotic. So.
You're going to go live in Andorra like everyone else?
Not Andorra, because there's not really a whole lot to do there. There's like, some, you could like bike and mountain bike and whatnot. I was actually going to probably stay somewhere near Barcelona and train at Global Performance again. And try to be somewhere near there. And then, I've got maybe some support from a dealership that'll hopefully help me get a bike to train and move around through Europe. So, kind of, like I said, lots of moving parts, but, that's hopefully the plan is Barcelona.
Okay. Well, let's close on this. So for those of you that are listening, like what I've learned about motorsports is that even at the highest level, like maybe not at MotoGP level, but definitely at like the Moto 2, Moto 3, and the FIM level where Mallory's racing, like you see all these sponsors, you see this, you think, oh, it's such a great, it is not a free ride. Like these guys hustle. It is hard work and it's expensive, right? So when you and I talked a year ago, you were professional, but you were still figuring out the international stuff. And like now so congratulations on how much you're still Mallory, but your focus is different. Like how can folks contribute to your effort? Like, we'll put stuff up on the screen, but you got your own team, you're looking for sponsors for, there's a whole lot of things. So let's just talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, my Facebook page and Instagram have all of my racing updates. So, Mallory Dobbs Racing is on both, Facebook and then Mal Dobbs on Instagram. And, there will be some other stuff coming out soon that will be ways for people to support. I'm just waiting for hear back. I just signed a contract. But that'll be exciting. So I'll get to post that soon, and then people can support me through that as well. And that'll be the main platform for support. So to be determined. And then I'll have new merch and stuff. We're working on getting a new merch site set up and things like that. But really, it's just a matter of like, if anybody wants to become a part of the program, anybody who's interested in being a World Superbike, being in the paddock, coming out and watching a race and getting, behind the scenes views, anything like that, I can give VIP experiences to my team because, I have that ability. And if any of businesses or people personally want to be involved, just shoot me a message and I'm more than happy to chat with people about it and, what their goals are and stuff. I mean, we have sponsorship packages, but I know lots of things don't work for everybody. And so really it's about building relationships, and that's something I really enjoy. I'm an extrovert. I love to talk to people, and I, love building those relationships with people and helping their businesses and or just giving them experiences they wouldn't get otherwise, Yeah, it really is just a matter of reaching out.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'm actually an expressive introvert. No one believes that I'm an introvert, but I am. It's interesting. Great. Well, I'll put all those links up, and who knows, I might pop over to you. I love Europe. I might pop over to Europe and see you. And you have like helmet sponsorships and all this sorts of stuff, right? You can all that stuff. I assume you can get your helmet You can buy a space
Yeah.
on your helmet or whatever, all that stuff you're going to announce later.
Yeah, so I'll do a custom wrapped helmet this year, maybe
Yeah.
a couple different versions this year. Last year's helmet turned out really good. But yeah, we still have some spots in the helmet available for some sponsorship. If anybody wants to be part of the special edition helmet, we might even sell some special edition helmets next year, depending on the level of interest and how they turn out. And yeah. And
KYT, right?
Yeah, KYT.
Yep. I'm a KYT person. I love my KYT helmet. I really do.
Great.
They're
Yeah,
ridiculously
so
good. Yeah. Well, I know you have people to do and things to see. You got to get going because you're always going because that's how you operate.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you on that topic, the last question, sorry, very late, is how many hours a night do you sleep, Mallory? How many hours a night do you sleep? Be honest.
Normally 6.5. On
Because
average.
your head is like going, okay.
Always. Yep.
Well, folks, if thank you very much for tuning in. If you have questions, put them in the comments below. I'm going to put all of Mallory's stuff up in the post edit, and I'm going to say goodbye to the listeners, and then I'm going to go offline and say goodbye to you. So.